Let's call the meeting to order of the Sandusky Landmark Commission. Before I ask for a roll call, just want to first welcome Ryan Whaley. Ryan, welcome. Ryan takes Mike Zoloff's position. Mike was asked to pick between landmark and planning because we are opening up more opportunities for community members to be involved, so he chose planning. So many thanks to Mike for his years on the Landmark Commission. And then John Lawrence asked to be reappointed, which he was, so congratulations to both of you. And the only other thing I'm thinking of is when we say Ryan now, we're going to have to add a last name.
That's right.
So roll call, please.
Okay, Dr. Berkey.
Present.
Mr. Lawrence.
Here.
Commissioner Meinzer.
Here.
Mr. Griffiths.
Here.
Mr. Galea.
Here.
Mr. Nagel.
Here.
And Mr. Whaley.
Here.
Okay.
Mr. Whaley.
Here.
Okay, we got everybody?
Yep.
Okay. Next item is our minutes from the October 21 meeting. You've had a chance to look those over. Do we have any changes? Okay, if not, then I need a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Thank you. Second?
Second, Mr. Chairman. Alan.
Yep. All those in favor of approving the October 21 meeting minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, approved. Item 3 on our agenda is election of officers. As you know, we have a chair position and a vice chair position. We'll start with the chair position. Do I have any nominations?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to nominate Dr. Berkey for chairman.
Okay. Any other nominations for chair? Last call. Nobody? Okay. If so, then I'll need an approval. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. So we'll move on to the vice chair's position. May I have a nomination for vice chair? I'll step in. I would like to renominate John Lawrence as vice chair. Any other nominations? Going. Okay. All those in favor of appointing John Lawrence vice chair, please signify by saying aye.
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 Congratulations, John.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is a review of the annual report that Tom has put together, I assume with Kristen's support. He's going to review what we accomplished and then look at goals going forward. So Tom, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As most of you may remember from previous years, this is a component of our ordinance that requires the Landmark Commission to submit a report to the city manager and the city commission on a yearly basis describing our activities throughout the year. It's essentially the same format as last year, just we updated it to include all the highlights from this year. We held 8 meetings throughout the year. We did conduct our yearly SHPO training, which is a yearly requirement per our ordinance, as long as possible. We obviously had some significant issues this year with COVID and moved all of our meetings virtually beginning in April. We had fewer applications this year than last year. We did approve 10 certificates of appropriateness. There was one denial. I think a highlight, our very first certificate of appropriateness, January of 2020, was approving restoration of the old house, or sorry, the Johnson House by the Old House Guild, which I think was a great story of success for preservation in the city. And in September, we held a work session on ordinance revisions. And so there's some more details in the chart that I provided in the report. And after today, we'll submit that in the manager's report to be included to the city commission at their next regular commission meeting. Last year, we also included goals for the year in the report. And, I talked with the chairman before the meeting, and he wanted to have a discussion on these today. So I look forward to taking any additional feedback from this commission. Essentially, these are the same as last year. I think with everything that happened between COVID and staff reductions in the planning department, our capacity as a department and a commission was severely reduced. So I think many of the things we wanted to accomplish did not happen. So I did, in this jumping off point, reiterated pretty much all the items from last year. The first one, as I mentioned, it is a requirement in our ordinance that there is an annual training session. I think the silver lining of the COVID pandemic is that there seems to be much more ability to do things virtually now. So I think that would make it easier for the SHPO office to conduct some sort of trainings, or maybe we could do something online. So I could work with the chair on exploring options for this coming year. So with that concludes my presentation with this, but would be happy to answer any specific questions if any member has one.
Questions or other goals that you believe we should consider for the year? I do want to take the opportunity to thank Tom and Kristen. As you know, the city's had many challenges this past year with the pandemic and reduced funding and staffing. And of course, Tom has taken on new major responsibilities with the city transit system. So we thank you for that, and we'll try to be ultra reasonable in terms of what we take on this year. Hopefully we'll come out of this pandemic and we'll get some tax revenue coming back in and get more people on their feet in the city. But in the meantime, thanks again, Tom. Thanks, Kristen, for your help and support through all of our work.
Thank you.
Okay, staff updates.
Mr. Chairman, I have a few different updates. One of the changes that was made this past year was the Landmark Commission, as many of you remember, granted administrative approval ability as outlined in our ordinance for signage. One that came through was for the Sandusky Artisans Community Center at 138 East Market Street. It's a building that's been before this commission twice, actually, in 2020 for different approvals. This was for a sign on the awning, and then a small underhanging sign on the awning. And then upon review of the zoning code and the preservation guidelines, it was determined that this met the criteria and was granted approval administratively in our ordinance. As you recall, does just require that we update the commission on these as they come in. We'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any about those. There's no illumination or anything about these, so it's pretty simple in terms of signage. The last few updates I have are a number of different things. The chairman mentioned some things as related to staffing in our department, and I don't think we've had a meeting since I've officially transitioned into the Sandusky transit role. But for the time being, I'm still working as the liaison to the Landmark Commission. And we also did hire a new director of community development, which will be now my director, Jonathan Holliday, who comes from the city of Euclid, who was planning and community development director there. So he's been here. This is his third week. So he'll be working with me and with this commission going forward. So we're really excited to have Jonathan with us and look forward to the expertise that he brings from Euclid. And they were a certified local government there and did a lot of work with the Cleveland Restoration Society in terms of doing home restorations and things like that. So we're excited to have Jonathan with us. We also, this was something that I added on this agenda and was hoping that we could have a discussion. The city commission did ask for all boards and commissions to examine their meeting times in an effort to ensure that members of the public and members of commissions have easier access to attend meetings that don't conflict with work. So this was our first meeting since that has come down to us. The Planning Commission, for context, at their December meeting decided to change their meetings to 5 p.m. Instead of the 4:30 time to line them up with the city commission meetings. So I just wanted to bring this up today, and then if anyone had any particular feedback, but then I could work with the chairman if we did decide to make any changes, work with the chair and vice chair on figuring that out and communicating that. But I don't know if I wanted to get any feedback from this commission about that first.
Tom, are we suggesting moving our meeting time till 5 o'clock?
So that there was no particular suggestion. I think there was a general a desire to see if commissions could move times. And the Planning Commission, like I said, they decided 5 o'clock worked best for them. I think it's just an issue that hasn't been really examined within recent years. I think it's just always been 4:30. So I don't think there needs to be any decision made, but I just wanted to make sure to get this addressed and see if anyone had any thoughts or feedback on that.
I have a bit of a thought. I think it does make sense. One thing that I've been working on some of the other boards and things I've been on is as we've kind of moved into this virtual world, and I realized we're going to be able to come back and probably meet in person, in the next year or so. But I wonder if we think about the ability for us as on the commission and of course, however we decide to do it, to make it public, but be able to have the virtual continue, whether, say there's 4 folks in person and 2 people online. I mean, I think that makes not only the community more involved, but certainly us. I mean, one of the, here I am out in Colorado and I'm able to join this meeting, which if it was just regulated to in person, I couldn't do it. So I think that if there's something I don't know if that's a bylaw or something we need to address, but maybe something we could think about.
Yeah, I would support that.
I'd be okay with moving it till
that's
later. It would allow me to get out there from Cleveland easier.
Mr. Chairman.
I think that's a good point, several good points. I'm also thinking of how eventually we transition out of the COVID situation, and all of us will probably be getting our vaccines at different times. So it can make it tricky in terms of trying to find a uniform time where we're doing face-to-face. We might have to transition into partial face-to-face. Some might have to be doing it online. So I think those are good thoughts. It's going to have to play here as we move forward. I'll just throw this in as a retired school superintendent. I try to advise other superintendents and districts, and they're kind of going through the same thing. But one of the positives of all of this is we're all learning how to do online, and it provides more flexible options. If you think of the school system, they used to always cancel school based on weather. This is not going to make the kids happy, but online kind of starts to solve that problem if we can continue to grow and use it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mike, I don't know for certain, but I know a lot of it has to do with the state Ohio public meeting laws and the exceptions that we're putting in place. So we're probably going to have to follow those guidelines as we move forward.
Exactly. We probably should note, Tom, we have two new members of our city organization. We got to talk a little bit about Brendan and Jonathan.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I did mention Jonathan. But we also have a new law director that started after our most recent meeting, Brendan Heil, who comes to us from Hills in Cleveland. And he took over as law director, I believe, the first week of November. So he will be, he is with us now. And so we're glad to be in a position to be getting back staffed up as it relates to this commission. So we're excited to have both of them, both great additions to the staff. As far as meeting times, I can work with the chair and vice chair offline to talk further about that, and we'll be in communication if we decide we want to move forward. The last couple pieces to update this commission on: the certified local government grant application through the State Historic Preservation Office is due on February 12th. And we had discussions last year with you as the commission, and also at the staff level, and we've continued those about submitting an application for those to help fund a revision to our preservation guidelines, our design review guidelines. So staff will be asking to submit that application, or asking the city commission to submit that application. The SHPO that is one of the categories that the Preservation Office does fund 100%, up to 100% of the funding. So that would be something that I think we've been in great need of for a number of years, and hopefully we can have positive results from that. And then the last update I have is the applications for February. We've received one already. There's one additional property owner that I've been in contact with over the last few months who I suspected was intending to submit for February. Today is the application deadline, so I'm working on kind of finalizing with them this week about whether they'll be coming in or not. And also, just as a quick update, the small city tap house building at the corner of Market and Columbus has submitted a building permit for restoration and maintenance of the eastern wall, the eastern elevation wall along the alleyway. So it's not one of the walls that's visible to the public, but there's some structural issues that they are looking to fix in the immediate future. So it's general maintenance and stability. So not something that would coming before this commission. But if there are any additional facade changes or improvements with that project, we would bring that before this commission. But just as an update that's going on at that building, if anyone sees anything there. And that is, those are all the updates that I have, unless anyone has any specific questions for me.
Any questions? At this time, I do want to share, we have an applicant, a potential applicant for February that's created a dilemma for us. The applicant is as Tom mentioned in a previous email, the property at 333 Market, where construction was started on the rooftop. The dilemma we're faced with that I'm kind of pushing on is there was no building permit, obviously no certificate of appropriateness that was filed. And so I think the question for us as a landmark commission is, should we acknowledge an application that contains violations to city ordinances? Because I don't feel that it's ethical for me as your chair to bring to you an application and ask you to consider it when on that application sits direct violations of our city ordinances pertaining to the building permits and our own certificate of appropriateness. Just an FYI, if you haven't looked at city ordinance language, the building permit, if you go ahead and do construction without a building permit, it's 1305.99 of our city ordinances, it's a failure to file, which carries with it a $500 fine, and then they must remedy the situation. Then our landmark is 116109, and that's going ahead and doing exterior construction without getting the certificate of appropriateness, which all of you probably know that comes first. So the contractor first, or the owner, must get our approval on the certificate and then apply for the building permit. By not filing or getting approval from us, it is a 4th degree misdemeanor. So I want you to be aware that for the February meeting, I am rejecting that application until such time as the city responds to those 2 violations of ordinances. Otherwise, I would be bringing you an application that has on it direct violations of city ordinances that I don't feel is ethical or correct for me to present to you for consideration. My position is we're not the enforcement arm for the city. We are to follow the ordinances, but in this case, I think what we've got is some past cultural changes the city's still going through, and those need to be addressed before it comes back to us as an application. If you've got additional questions, please feel free to give me a call or give John a call or Tom. Tom's going to try to work through this with city administration. And what I've asked is that it be addressed in some way before it comes back to us. Tom, do you have anything that you would like to add, or John?
No, just that, to the chairman's point, that our code is enforcement with the building division and division of code compliance. So, working with within the different departments just to see what the resolution will be with this. So, staff is working on addressing the issue.
And I think it's something we need to talk about going forward. Ryan Nagel, maybe you've got some experience. Joe, maybe you've got some experience that you could share some of your thoughts. I raised the question with Tom, if someone is applying for a certificate of appropriateness with us, is it possible to make a requirement of that application? The fact that what they're asking for is free of any city ordinance violations. So that it shouldn't, I feel it shouldn't come to us unless those are clarified, taken care of. The other thing that I've asked Tom to do is we've been talking a long time about signage language. Some of us have received phone calls of concern about the last sign that we approved that went up on Columbus Avenue. People unhappy with that. And if you recall, we've had trouble because we haven't had the language in place to say no. And I think that's just a sign we need to move that to the front burner. That, as well as the demolition language that Ryan Nagel pointed out to us and shared with us some drafts from the city of Cleveland. We need to move on that as well. So I asked Tom at our February meeting to come forward with a first draft of language for both of those areas that we can review and comment on. We'll try to get those out enough in advance of our February meeting so that you have had time to review them and can bring your comments and suggestions forward.
Mr. Chairman, just for my information, could you refresh our memory as to which signage that was? Because I'm looking at our report and it's slipping my mind at the moment.
It's the Zion Lutheran Church.
Okay, thanks. I thought it might be that, but I wasn't sure exactly.
Have any of you received phone calls or concerns from the community? Any other questions, concerns, or new business from members?
Mr. Chair, if I might just make a suggestion.
Sure.
You raised an excellent point about whether an applicant may make an application when they are currently somehow in violation of city ordinance. Legally, I don't know the answer to that question. It's not really my area of law, but it does seem to me that the ordinance is not exactly clear on that. So maybe a possibility as we work through this issue with that particular applicant is that it may be something for the commission to perhaps clarify the ordinance just to make sure there's not ambiguity about it. I imagine the law director could probably give us guidance as to whether or not that's already implicit in the ordinance. I just don't know enough to say with certainty. Maybe Mr. Horsman would also have an opinion on that, but it seems to me that that could be an opportunity. I know we just suggested some revisions to landmark ordinance, but this could be, and by doing that, that might be an opportunity too for the city commission to kind of clarify for the public that going forward, this is the expectation that, the city is going to be working under. As you said, there might be kind of a cultural shift here that the commission kind of needs to make it known as a matter of policy that boards in the city, whether it's our commission, whether it's the planning commission, which I was part of at one point, is not in the business of granting forgiveness before permission. And, some of these are taken in good faith, but I'm sure we know that some of these are frankly, these ordinances are not hard to find. They're not obscure. The fact that this board exists is not a secret to anyone purchasing or developing property in this community. Same with the planning commission. It's very well known. The Sandusky Register makes it well known that these things exist. The city staff certainly makes everyone aware that these things, it's rarely that you have a homeowner that, puts up some non-compliant fence and out of genuine ignorance. It's usually somebody embarking on some commercial project, doing the work because, hey, the contractor was available, and then coming to us 2 months later and saying, oh, by the way, I need approval for the $10,000 renovation. And then, if we have a problem with anything they've done, then it's, well, I've already spent all this money. And, I think that's a situation we all want to avoid. We don't want anybody to spend money and then, lose out economically because maybe something about that could have been addressed if they'd gone through this whole process first. So
Right.
This just might be a good opportunity for the commission to kind of, put a clear requirement in place that, then just becomes known to everyone. Or the commission may feel that there should be some flexibility here and would would make that known to us through their debate that we do have the power to kind of cure, forgive, however you want to phrase that. But I think it's something where maybe people who are elected to be on the commission should perhaps weigh in as to how we should approach that, or at least the law director should give us some guidance. I think, Mr. Chair, the way you're handling it right now is certainly appropriate, but I think going forward, there's a good opportunity for the people I mentioned to maybe give us clarity in one direction or the other.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, I think it's, I discussed this with Tom, and Tom assured me that he was going to move forward with the city law director, have a discussion around the very things that you're bringing up, and seeing what the remedy is for this.
Mr. Chairman, I have a thought here.
Yes.
Listening to Joe, I think he's correct, particularly more now. Yes, most folks are aware there's a landmark commission. They're aware that there's building permits. But I will say this: when I first moved back to Sandusky, and this is now we're talking 10 years ago, I had no idea of all of the steps I had to take. And so I've been harping. Tom, you've probably heard me say this before, and I don't think this is just a landmark commission piece, but one of the things that I think that the opportunity is here, maybe this is even a goal, is there really needs to be a roadmap that when someone says, hey, I really am interested in this building and I'd love to do this, here is your folder. These are the commissions. These are the things that you're going to deal with. And I think that, and I don't know if that's starting to be, I don't think that's just us, but I think that could be potentially helpful. And if we could work with the cities and potentially planning commission, things like that, to get something like that done, it would make it a lot easier. And it also kind of covers us. We can say, oh yeah, I handed, when they came in for the first thing, they got this. And so they had all this information. So it kind of gives us a little bit of a, don't have to use that potential forgive cure option as much in the future. But just a thought I've experienced just doing a few projects in town.
I think that's a great point. When we met with Jonathan, we brought up that issue of shouldn't we be reaching out, especially to new property owners, and saying, here's who we are, here are the regulations, here's the process, here are the steps. And he said he was going to look into that because that's one issue. In this very specific situation, it's not a matter of didn't know.
Oh, of course, yeah.
This is one that's pretty straightforward. And that's why I've kind of drawn a line in the sand and said, look, we got to have some action on this before we take it back to Landmark, because this one's pretty clear.
Mr. Chairman.
Tom?
Yes, thank you. So thank you for the feedback for everyone. I think regarding this issue, I think I agree, or I know I agree, and I appreciate Ryan's comments because I think they're true. And I know this was a high priority on our radar at the beginning of last year. And I think just with everything, it's wasn't able to be totally executed because of our staffing issues. I will say a lot of it from an internal perspective, as far as the Landmark process goes, has really improved this year. An undertaking I undertook, for example, was making sure to code all of our protected designated landmarks in our internal systems, just to ensure that building permits are not getting issued for designated properties before they're rerouted to me, to check and see if they need approval or not. And so things like that. So there have been a lot of small things that most people don't really see that have been cleaned up. I do agree the public piece of it, has been definitely on our department's priority list and this commission's priority list. So those comments are all well taken, and I know Jonathan, as my director, will be very helpful in making sure that gets done this year.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This might be for Tom Horseman, but and it goes back to the building department working together with Landmark and planning. And as an example, I remodeled a house on Lockwood and built a pole barn. And engineering said I could not make a curb cut and drain the gutters into the street. And building said that I could not drain the gutters into the yard. So in the end, I did the curb cut. And but we never got a certificate of occupancy because we couldn't get the two departments to agree what I should do. So I would suggest we go back to what the fire department did, police department did, the commission sort of things for liquor licenses. Everybody signed off, all departments that would be involved, got all the plans and permits. And I hope it doesn't slow it down if you did do something like that, but everybody reviews it, signs off, says this is our stance and this is what we need to do before it gets to the end, the planner, the architect, or the end user, because it's frustrating when you're trying to go between two departments by yourself.
Correct me, Tom, you got everything on electronics now, right?
That's correct. At the end, I think it was end of 2019, everything was moved to a new system. So, for example, if someone now comes in to submit a building permit and the building department goes to enter it in, it's all sorted by address and parcel number. So the building department will pull up a property, and now every landmark property has a scrolling red flag on top of it that says it's a designated landmark, contact planning, needs a certificate of appropriateness. And then there's a flag that gets sent up to me that I get a notification to go into the system and look at it and whether approve it or, whether we need to create a landmark commission case for it. So to the Commissioner Meinzer's point, I think those are things that we are constantly trying to avoid as far as landmark goes, is working with building department. I think we're internally have gotten to a good spot. A couple of years ago, I don't think that was the case, but I think we've rectified it from that aspect as far as landmark goes.
Any other thoughts or comments? Well, thank you, gentlemen. I need a motion to adjourn if we have nothing else.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, Alan, I'm not sure if you can hear me. I move that we adjourn.
Second, please.
I second.
We're adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Look forward to
Thanks,
working with
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. John, Lauren?
Is now exiting.